Hello, everybody. This is Jamal Thomas, and welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So, a few stories for tonight. So, I'm going to start off with an interesting question. What is reality? What's real? And how do you know that what you're perceiving is real? The things that you accumulate is actually reality. Reality, for the most part, is made up of things that you see, hear, and everything else. And at the end of the day, the only thing you know is what you experience. 6 corporations control 90% of the media in America. How do you know what's real if the information that you're receiving are controlled by people with a vested interest in something else? So, for example, in 1983, there were 50 media companies. Today, there are 6. And the amazing part of that is many of these companies have vested interests all over the place. So you would have, for instance, a weapon manufacturer, GE, holding on to Comcast, NBC, Universal Pictures, Focal Features. Do you really think GE, a weapons manufacturer, is going to do anything to adversely affect the profits of the other companies through the media? My point is, truth is slippery, and it's hard to know what it is. So let's talk about Syria and Aleppo. So we've been hearing a lot about Russians and Syrians just obliterating Aleppo and just wide-scale slaughter. The horror, the number of lives lost, the brutality of the Russians and the bloodthirsty Syrian army going through and killing those people. What if that's not true? What if there's another story to that? So this is an independent journalist that went to Syria. Her name is, what is her name? Eva Bartlett. And Eva Bartlett speaks Arabic, and she's gone into areas that for the most part, most journalists just don't go. They don't have anybody down there for it. They get feedback from other sources. And she comes back with a very interesting story. And she's having a conversation with a guy who essentially says, hey, why are you saying we're lying? We're Western journalists. Why are you calling us liars?
When you talk about the Syrian people and what the Syrian people want, how can you quantify that? Do you have any independent surveys where you can
It's only 3 minutes.
Document that? And secondly, you talk about the corporate media, the Western media, the lies, and all of this. Could you explain what you think might be the agenda from us in the Western media, and why we should lie, why the international organizations on the ground should lie, why we shouldn't believe all these absolutely documentable facts that we see from the ground, these hospitals being bombed, these civilians who are talking about the atrocities that they have been experiencing. How can you justify calling all of us liars? Thank you.
I mean, there are certainly honest journalists amongst the very compromised establishment media. Let's start with your second question. So, international organizations on the ground. Tell me which ones are on the ground in Eastern Aleppo. Yeah, okay, I'll tell you, there are none. There are none. These organizations are relying on the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, which is based in Coventry, UK, which is one man. They're relying on compromised groups like the White Helmets, which, let's talk about the White Helmets. The White Helmets were founded in 2013 by a British ex-military officer. They have been funded to the tune of $100 million by the US, UK, and Europe, and other states. They purport to be rescuing civilians in Eastern Aleppo and Idlib, yet no one in Eastern Aleppo has heard of them. And I say no one, bearing in mind that now 95% of these areas of Eastern Aleppo are liberated. The White Helmets purport to be neutral, yet they can be found carrying guns and standing the dead bodies of Syrian soldiers. And their video footage actually contains children that have been recycled in different reports. So you can find a girl named Aya who turns up in a report in month, say, August, and she turns up in the next month in 2 different locations. So they are not credible. The SOHR is not credible. Unnamed activists are not credible. Once or twice, maybe, but every time, not credible. So your sources on the ground, you don't have them. As for your agenda, not your, but the agenda of some corporate media, it is the agenda of regime change. How can the New York Times, I was reading it this morning, Or how can Democracy Now!, which I was reading the other day, maintain until this day that this is a civil war in Syria? How can they maintain until this day that that the protests were unarmed and nonviolent until, say, 2012? That is absolutely not true. How can they maintain that the Syrian government is attacking civilians in Aleppo when every person that's coming out of these areas occupied by terrorists is saying the opposite? How do I quantify the support of the Syrian people? The elections. In 2014, the Syrian people held elections. The point being, overwhelmingly, the people support President Assad. There are people that want change in the government. We're not pretending they don't want change. Everybody wants change. But in terms of support of the government, the point is they don't see President Assad as the problem. They see the problem as terrorism. They see elements of problems in the system that they have there. But President Assad, they don't see as the problem. They actually overwhelmingly support him. So I'm basing it on their choice in their leader, and I'm basing it on my interactions with people in Syria.
Wow. So that's a different story. And to her credit, she makes the point that many of the groups that are backed by the United States are uncontrolled, meaning that some of the atrocities that are taking place were taking place from people we were backing. Now, interesting enough, a recent report showed in Syria, militias armed by the Pentagon were fighting those armed by the CIA. That sounds absolutely ridiculous. So we're essentially giving money to people on both sides, and they're fighting each other with the weapons and, I guess, materials that we've given them. Sounds like she has a good point. I mean, if you really control the groups that are there, does shit like that happen? I would say no. I would say that the CIA and the military would not have groups fighting each other. All right, so let's keep going. So the next one, Wesley Clark. So General Wesley Clark, well known, even ran for the president. He makes this point that we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years: Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Iran. And this sounds kind of conspiracy theorist, but Wesley Clark is far from a conspiracy theorist. He's a general. He's an honest guy.
About 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rump. And so,
Can you turn the volume up?
and then Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs just to say hello to some of the people on the Joint Staff who used to work for me. And one of the generals called me in. He said, "Sir, you gotta come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, "No." He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, "We're going to war with Iraq. Why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." So I said, "Well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda?" He said, No. He says, "There's nothing new that way. They just made the decision to go to war with Iraq." He said, "I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we've got a good military and we can take down governments." So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, he said, I just got this down from upstairs," meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran."
Go through the countries again?
Well, starting with Iraq, then Syria and Lebanon, then Libya, then Somalia and Sudan, and then back to Iran.
Well, that's interesting. Guess where we're bombing now? Somalia. Obama has just started a bombing campaign in Somalia. This is New York Times. In Somalia, the United States escalates a shadow war. There's an interesting line that has to be read. The Somalian campaign is a blueprint for warfare that President Obama has embraced and will pass along to his successor. It is a model the United States now employs across the Middle East and North Africa, from Syria to Libya, despite the president's stated aversion to American quote-unquote boots on the ground. In the world's war zones, This year alone, the United States has carried out airstrikes in 7 countries and conducted special operations and missions in many more. American officials said the White House has quietly broadened the president's authority for the use of force in Somalia by allowing airstrikes to protect Americans and African troops as they combat fighters from Shabaab. This sounds pretty close to what General Wesley Clark was saying. I mean, essentially Obama followed, I guess, the model that the Bush administration put forward. Now, to be fair to Obama, he did try to put forth the Iran deal. And maybe the Iran deal in some way was trying to hedge this stuff off. It doesn't look like it, though. It looks like what Wesley Clark is saying is essentially what's taking place. Maybe not on the exact timetable, but damn sure with the powers that they have given them. There's a continuation of this. So, where is it? Damn. Okay. Yeah, so there's a continuation of this. A while back, there was a terrorism threat called Khorasan. And Khorasan was supposed to be even deadlier than Al-Qaeda. It's like, oh, they're super Al-Qaeda. If Al-Qaeda was on coke and steroids, that would be Khorasan. And we have to do something immediately. We don't have a choice. Now, interesting enough, Obama tried to bomb Syria once before when his ego was bruised by saying red line, and everybody said, no, you're not bombing him because of your ego. So then, a little bit later, he says, hey, there's another threat. I'll read it. This is from The Intercept, Glenn Greenwald, amazing author. As the Obama administration prepared to bomb Syria without congressional or UN authorization, it faced 2 problems. The first, homeland. A second was the lack of legal justification for launching a new bombing campaign with no viable claim of self-defense or UN approval. The solution to both problems was found in the wholesale concoction of a brand new terror threat that was branded the Khorasan Group. After spending weeks depicting ISIS as an unprecedented threat, too radical for even Al-Qaeda, the administration officials suddenly began spoon-feeding their favorite media organizations, the national security journalists, tales of a secret group that was even scarier and more threatening than ISIS, one that posed a direct and immediate threat to American homeland. Seemingly out of nowhere, a new terror group was created in media lore. Further on, a new shadowy group worse than ISIS terror. So, Obama essentially created whole cloth a reason to bomb some Syria. And he even got the media to go along with it. So the Associated Press warned, the fear is that Khorasan militants will provide these sophisticated explosives to their Western recruits who could sneak them onto U.S.-bound flights. It explains that although ISIS was received most of the attention, the Khorasan group is considered the most immediate threat. CBS News continued with it, directly linking soon-to-arrive U.S. bombing campaign in Syria to the need to protect Americans from needed exploded. This morning, we are learning of a new group of growing terror threat coming out of Syria, and an Al-Qaeda cell you probably never heard of. Nearly everything about them is classified. Bob Orr is in Washington with new information on a group some consider more dangerous than ISIS. The beauty of that is, they said, oh, the president doesn't want anybody to know about this. While at the same token, spoon-feeding them information to get it out to the public. In order to create a situation that he can justify to say, yes, I don't have authority to do this, but I'm protecting the homeland. What is reality, man? What do we know of reality? Only thing we know of reality is what we're told, unless we're directly experiencing it. And I gotta be honest, I don't know what's true about what's going on. I suspect it's probably somewhere between the middle. I suspect, yeah, Syria and Russia were probably bombing some areas. I suspect you probably had some good troops in Syria and Russia who were probably also trying to help people. I suspect that the United States narrative about it, about how horrible Russia and Syria is, but ignores Yemen and what we're doing over there. A little hypocritical, to say the least. And look, I've experienced this myself. So, I was in areas of Northern Africa. I've been to Egypt, I've been to Israel, I've been to Jordan, and I've been to some areas of Palestine. And what I discovered over there was, there were people. There were people. There might have been a religious overlay, but at the end of the day, they were just people. And you would see people watching porn. You would see people talk about their girlfriend and boyfriends behind their mom's back. You would see all this stuff. I heard one guy said, I want to come to America to have sex with women. And I tried to explain to him, like, dude, there's a little bit more to it than that. He didn't get it, but God bless him. They're just people. The things that we do to them, the way we scapegoat them here, we turn them into terrorists, we turn them into all these things they're not. You may have factions of people who are bad, but don't you have factions of people bad in the United States? Yeah. Why do we blow theirs out of proportion but not ours? So, look, and to be honest, we have to take credit for some of the stuff that's going on over there. A lot of stuff. I mean, the CIA was trying to overthrow multiple governments. That's not even. I went over that in an earlier video. I'm going to end this segment, but I make this point to say what we know of is reality. Who knows? It's up for grabs. And many times governments have a vested interest in giving you a certain narrative that makes themselves look more clean and makes other people look dirtier. Be skeptical. Challenge the narrative. Thank you.